Hello there, and welcome to the Stay Off My Lawn podcast, where we'll have a little fun, lots of laughs, and discussions on the common sense that needs to be applied to a lot of today's world news issues. And now, the disclaimer. Stay Off My Lawn is not intended as legal, medical, or financial advice. Void where prohibited. No purchase necessary to win. Open to legal U.S. residents 18 or over in the contiguous 48 states. Any resemblance to anyone living or deceased is purely coincidental. Actual price may vary. Only use as directed. Not a member of FDIC. And now, here are your hosts, Mike and Richard.
All right, welcome to this week's edition of Stay Off My Lawn. It is December 10th, 2024, and this is episode 95. 95. We're getting creeping up on that 100. We still have no idea what kind of special we're going to do with 100. You have any ideas? SOML at duck.com. So let me know what you think we should do. And we can do
that address again was SOML at duck.com.
And, we've already gotten the ones about doing the show naked. We've done a few of them that way already. And really, all it did was just kind of chafe my butt, which a lot of things chafe my butt because I'm old.
Steve's suggestion doesn't count. Yeah, stop being so excited about it. Nobody wants to see you either.
Speaking of Steve, he just took we have a special guest this week. He took him down to the green room, and it's going to start next segment. We're going to have Jamie Miller come in. He has quite a resume. I think we just quit reading. It was TLDR, too long didn't read. But suffice to say, he's a political expert, especially in Florida politics. He's got his thumb on that whole thing. He was actually the former director of the Republican Party of Florida, which is kind of cool that he's done a lot of things. He knows a lot of these people intimately and knows their personalities. It's kind of cool. Anyway, Steve's got him down the green room. Was he just in there? Was he just at the board?
No, you didn't give him some of your special drink, did you? Oh, man. Well, he'll be loosened up when he comes on the show.
He's either going to be loosened up or he's going to have a hoarse voice from throwing that stuff back up. We'll have to wait. Hopefully.
Knows what jungle juice he put together. Lord knows what's in that cup. I don't even want to ask.
It makes Jägermeister smell good.
When you go by, it's like, my eyes burning, but it's no, we know what's there, Steve. It's okay. You just go back to your business.
It's like a mix of Jägermeister and eggnog. It's just something really. Or what the cat dragged in too. It's a whole.
That just gave me a bad taste in my mouth.
It's an experience in and of itself. So anyway, Jamie be joining us here in just a few minutes. Before we get started, I do have one extra thing. I didn't even tell Richard about this. The Oxford University Press, they release a word of the year. And so this year, for 2024, that word is called brain rot. Sounds like two words to me, but who's counting really? The meaning of brain rot. Do you know the meaning of that?
No, but I did hear something about this the other day where you do something over and over that's worthless, like on a tablet, or you're playing a game and it just turns into your brain.
I mean, we're seeing that really in 2025. I think it's actually kind of perfect. The actual meaning is supposed to be, it's a term that refers to the perceived deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially due to consuming trivial or unchallenging online content, sort of like a podcast, if the shoe fits.
Like, well, how did they get that definition of our show? I'm just trying to.
It's not easy. We're getting ourselves out there.
It's not the same. We try to change up every 15 minutes. You get something else, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And today will be no different. You're going to like what we have for you today, I believe.
Wonderful today. I in talking with him a little bit, holy smokes, he's
just smart.
Going to be a great guest.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. We like having smart people because it makes us feel dumber. Maybe I forgot what the reason was, but I really liked having him around anyway.
We do that to make our guests look better. That's all.
That's it.
Yeah, we do that on purpose.
Oh my gosh. The fallout, let's get to this too. The fallout continues for Uncle Joe's pardon of Hunter. Wesley Hunt, one of our favorite Congress people from Texas, he had a take on all this. Here's that.
Well, this is the canary in the coal mine. And the reason why we're talking about these people is because Joe Biden gave his son a blanket pardon. And he's really only been charged for two things. It's a gun charge and tax evasion. So why would you give him a blanket charge that dates back to 2014? Right. Because you know that there are skeletons in the closet. And everyone that's been mentioned, there are skeletons in the closet. And everyone absolutely knows that. And so we are now talking about this two-tier justice system that we have been fighting ad infinitum for the past few years, and now it's coming to fruition, because now you're going to blanketly pardon people that clearly have done wrong by the American people, and this is actually, in my opinion, an omission of guilt. And so we need to hold their feet to the fire. We need to have a special counsel to make sure that we actually investigate these people, just like they persecuted us for the past 4 years.
And I think Kash Patel being the leader of the FBI is going to be a good step in that direction.
So. Oh, and people that are, I think it's just funny as hell that the DEI hired group of folks with the FBI, if you bring him in, we're going to quit. Okay, like that's a threat.
That saves us from firing you, so what the heck?
And they're all in a nice photo kneeling, and it's like, this is great. You, and you. Yeah, we all know who you are. Bye.
Well, the thing is, if they quit, they don't have to have any severance, which I think would save the country a lot of money. It would go into the Doge item list, and that would be great. Oh my gosh.
The amount of Democrats that are going, and he's gonna. Okay, there's not gonna. The American people have said, you're gonna, and we want this stuff gone, and the bloat is over. Right. There's too much of that old Democrat philosophy of bigger government is better for you. We can take care of you. No, all it does is lead to more corruption.
Absolutely. And more taxes. And it's, and the $34 trillion or $35 trillion, we're still adding another $1 trillion to our debt every 100 days. That has not stopped. It's still continuing. And if Biden gets his way, he's starting to give more money to Ukraine here at the last few months before he leaves office. So I'm like, man, it just continues. I mean, he's got to make that extra little bit of kickback or whatever he's doing. What the reasoning is with this whole Ukraine thing, I think it goes a whole lot deeper than any of us could even imagine. So
yeah, but that blanket pardon of 11 years is rather a specific number.
Yes, it is. Jon Stewart actually talked about that. He has.
God, that was funny. Yeah, it's like, why do you need to? It's those things that make you go,
Yes, it is. Here's Jon Stewart talking about that specifically.
I'm sure the pardon is a narrowly written, precisely drawn farewell note of compassion for a loved one.
The pardon sweeping, covering offenses that Hunter Biden, quote, has committed or may have committed or taken part in over the past 11 years.
11 years is a very specific and not rounded amount of time. So, Hunter, I'll give you a pardon. A few years, 5 years, 10 years. It needs to be 11. And if you would be so kind, make sure this upcoming New Year's Eve is also covered.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think that being that specific, I think that, and I think we talked about this last week. I heard Glenn Beck was talking to somebody last week, and he had said something about, with Hunter having the pardon, and if he does have to testify in front of Congress, he cannot take the fifth anymore because he can't self-incriminate because there's nothing to, he's pardoned.
You can't, you're not incriminating yourself, so you don't have that right anymore to say that.
Right.
So you kind of just screwed the pooch, and it's like, bring him in.
Bring him in. Oh, definitely. But that's the thing. You've got two choices at that point. If you either answer the question or you're held in contempt to Congress. That's really the only two choices he would have at that point. I think it might work out pretty well. I think I heard an interview with Mike Lee. I was just thinking about Kash Patel. Mike Lee is a congressman from Utah. I'm sorry, he's a senator from Utah, and he said that that he believes he's talked to a lot of these appointees, and he believes that he's actually pretty positive that Hegseth is going to get through, and RFK Jr. is going to get through. Which I was kind of worried about all those appointees because they've got some things that the Democrats hate. You know that they're doing.
Well, not just the Democrats. You got a bunch of rhinos in there. Well, I'm not going to, Lindsey Graham is, I need to see some more info. What? All of the Democrat folks it was a non-issue. Why is it every time the Republicans do something, the news media gets a hold of it, and then all of it, your donors are telling you don't vote for him because that could be a problem. And it's like, no, these lobbyists have got to go. I've had enough of them.
Yep, no, I agree. And but I read an article earlier today, I think when I first woke up, that Bernie Sanders actually likes the fact that RFK Jr. is going to be in the administration and doing what he does. For them too, that's kind of odd bedfellows to me. But I mean, I think it's great. At least Bernie Sanders is honest about who he is.
So. Yep, he doesn't make he doesn't make any apologies. Is this is it? This is what I believe in. This is what I like.
Yeah. But even though I don't agree with him on 90% of the things that he talks about, I appreciate the honesty. And, coming out of Washington, D.C., that's very, very unique. Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania was interviewed by Joy Behar. I didn't know she knew how to interview people, but apparently she thinks she's camera friendly and the whole thing, which is wonderful for her. But anyway, she asked him
every time she's on.
she asked him a question about this whole Hunter Biden thing, and I don't think he answered the way she expected.
A lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh well, I think. It's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated, but I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now is that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases, and we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
They'll say that about the J6 people too, though, right? That's what they're going to say on the other side, that is weaponized also.
I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about the New York trial. And now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like, now he's a convicted felon and those things. And now for our party, we were talking about criminal justice, and we are now talking about second chances. And now all of a sudden, now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trials, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated, and those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
It's hard to believe that I actually agree with Fetterman on a lot of things here. That's really kind of interesting.
And she was trying to get him she goes, no, I'm talking about, and she was trying to give him a leading question. Right. We're going here, and those people are I'm not talking about that. It's like, holy crap, because she was doing typical liberal interviewing by saying, leading questions on, this is what I want you to say. Right. And he went, no.
And a lot of senators, a lot of Congress people would follow her direction too. But he's not like that. I like it. She wanted to bring up the whole January 6th thing, which to me, there is no better example of
like tomorrow.
Yeah.
They need to pardon tomorrow. Absolutely. Out of those dumps they're in.
That was 100% politically motivated, that some of those people are still in jail. And
there's more and more evidence that I think that every one of them in jail or have been indicted for anything need to sue all the members that were on the panel.
Oh, the J6 committee. Yeah.
When you start doctoring evidence, getting rid of evidence, okay, you're guilty of treason.
You're talking about Liz Cheney. You're talking about Adam Kinzinger. You're talking about Adam Schiff. There's a lot of people that need to have their feet held to the fire, just like Fetterman said. I totally agree with him. Totally agree.
Well,
with
these
him.
people, they should be allowed to sue all of them. You can't sue the government. Sue those that were on the panel.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not? Because if they
They all
fabricate,
deserve- I don't mind my tax money going to
I don't either.
give them something for the 4 freaking years that they've been in there.
Yep. And they fabricated a lot of that stuff, and they
So made up.
skillfully edited a lot of that video that even some of the people that were on the panel was not even aware that there was so much video that they did not see, and it was out of context. And I'm like, it was a show. It was an absolute show. We do have one more clip here. The great Patrick Bet-David, he has a podcast. If you've not seen the PBD podcast, he's very, very good. He has a clip of John Morgan from Morgan & Morgan, if you're not familiar with him. But here in the Southeast, he's extremely famous ambulance chaser type lawyer type, so it's like, if you get hurt in a car accident, call us, that type thing. But he
does it all.
But he had this to say about the Harris campaign.
Major Democratic donor says Barron Trump is smarter than Kamala Harris's entire campaign. So we'll go ahead and play this clip, Rob.
She thinks she's Obama. She goes to Hawaii because Obama goes by. She started talking like Obama, imitating Obama. She is not Barack Obama. She has no talent. She can never run for president again.
She has no talent.
She ran once and got 0 delegates. She got 8% of California. I begged them not to put her up. She was going to be tethered to Biden no matter what. That was a zero-sum game for her. But she thought that all these votes were for her. They were not. The votes that she got were people voting against Trump. And the votes that Trump got were the people voting for Trump. What the Harris campaign should have done, instead of avoiding Joe Rogan and podcasts, it turns out that Barron Trump, who looks like a runway model, Barron Trump is a lot smarter than everybody in the Harris.
So I think that Barron Trump, it was his idea to kind of do all that stuff. And, John Morgan was a big Democratic donor, and he's been a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, at least here in the Southeast, for a long, long time. And I read something the other day, and I can't verify that, but he has left the Democratic Party and become an independent, which that's how Tulsi Gabbard got her start going down the conservative route too. So
yeah, they're going, okay, that's facts. And being a lawyer kind of has to look at that, and he's going, this just isn't right. Nope. She's dumber than a box of rocks, as a dear departed friend used to always say.
And I was talking to my cousin the other day, and I said something about it. So as dumb as Cammie Jo is, Tim Walz couldn't have been any dumber, because he was probably about 10% of her IQ, because he's like shoe leather. That's
right. Dumber in the truck.
Hey, we're up against a break. As a matter of fact, we're over on a break.
Way over. Sorry.
When we come back, we will have Jamie Miller as our special guest, and hopefully he's going to have a lot of insight on Florida politics and nationwide politics. We got a lot of questions for him, so hang in there. We will be right back.
Stay tuned. More of the Stay Off My Lawn podcast is coming up.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
All right, welcome back to Stay Off My Lawn. It is segment 2, and as promised, we do have a special guest. He is an expert in Florida politics. His name is Jamie Miller. He's got probably a 12-page resume, if I was going to venture a guess. He's a political and advertising consultant and author. He's a former executive director of the Republican Party of Florida, along with many other things. So how you doing, Jamie? Glad to have you.
Doing great. Thanks for having me on. And I'll try not to step on the grass.
Well, we do give permission to special folks. So
you're grumpy.
You might just let stay there.
I might shoot just anything when it comes up this way.
Good Lord, if his resume got any longer, it'd have to be 12 pages.
That's what I'm thinking. I see you've been interviewed by TMZ as well as Radio Free Russia. What is the Radio Free Russia story? You got to tell me that story.
So that was, gosh, I think that was election night. It was one of Barack Obama's wins. It was either 2008 or 2012, and I don't know exactly how they found me. I've appeared with them one time, but it was super interesting that they you hear somebody translating in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's like, oh, and so number one, you have like this echo in a different language.
Sure.
And then, like the conspiracy theorist in me is like, are they actually saying what I'm saying? Like so, but it's but it was fun to do. And, I'm always happy. I'm always honored when people like yourselves or Radio Free Russia care enough to have my opinion. So thank you.
I don't know if we just got compared to Radio Free Russia, but anyway,
I don't know that we've had that comparison. It's fine. We like having you on the show. It's not a problem.
I know in Idaho and Georgia, you're way more powerful.
Yes.
We won't interpret for you in the wrong manner. It'd be okay.
It's like getting that tattoo. You think it's Chinese. It's like it says love and peace, but it actually says Kung Pao chicken or something.
Or soup.
Punch me.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's jump right in. The Attorney General thing. I got to ask you about this. Pam Bondi. She used to be the Attorney General of Florida. Or is she currently the Attorney General of Florida? Or
She's not. She's not.
Okay.
She is, in fact, I think it's 2018. She was term limited out.
Gotcha.
So
I gotcha.
She served concurrent with Rick Scott from 2010, or the elections were 2010 and 2018.
I see. So do you think that's a step up, a step down, kind of a congruent move between her and Matt Gaetz? Do you think that was something?
There's no question that it's a step up. I supported Matt Gaetz because the president supported him. I kind of felt like that was a little bit of a stretch for Matt just from an administrative type role because he doesn't have that type of experience. But certainly Pam Bondi is one of the American people are going to have a lot of fun learning about Pam Bondi. She's one of the smartest people I've ever been in a room with. And she is deliberate. She's camera ready. She, as many people know, I've seen her on Fox News. And has been a Fox News contributor for more than a decade, I think now. And she, in fact, I think she was on Fox News before she was Attorney General. And then she was a prosecutor in Tampa prior to that. So she is very well-versed in the law and the Constitution. And I think people really like what they have to see out of her experience. And she certainly has administered a huge, huge office like the Attorney General of Florida. So she's certainly capable of the job.
Richard, you've heard, I'll be honest, when her name came up, it didn't really ring a bell with me. So.
And I didn't know her either. It's like, okay, it's somebody from Florida. Oh, she was the Attorney General in Florida. Okay. And then I saw an interview and somebody was trying to do a gotcha question. That didn't go over well. And he was whipped about the head and shoulders with tongue lashings that were, he didn't ask another follow-up question. Because like you said, I noticed, oh, Lord, this lady knows her stuff. She's, while she's an attractive young lady, she is very bright and she seemed to have things at her fingertips. And I'll bet if you looked up any of the stuff that she said, they're actual fact. There wasn't any hesitation like trying to make up something.
Incredibly smart and prepared.
Yes, very smart and prepared. And I think when I heard that, I went, oh, we're in good hands now.
And I think that just from listening to what other senators have said is that, she doesn't have the skeletons in her closet or even the appearance of skeletons in her closet like Matt Gaetz has from his past. So, and maybe he got railroaded with all that. I don't know all the facts with him, but it does seem like this is a fantastic choice. So that's good to hear that she's as smart as she seems. So good.
I think people will like her.
Yeah. Yeah. Trump has also nominated another Floridian, which I think has been rescinded already, Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister. That's for those of you not from Florida or from the Southeast. Hillsborough County is the city of Tampa and the surrounding area. Do you know much about Chad? Do you know?
I don't. I live in Sarasota, which is almost a suburb. We're about 45 minutes south of Tampa. Yeah. But I've not dealt with him on any level, whether it's political or, on the professional side. So, he has a good reputation among sheriffs, and, I'm very close to our sheriff, and he seems to like him, but, what I've heard, I don't want to speak out of school because I don't like to speak for other people, but if you're allowed to let me have one rumor, it was kind of like, well, he did some things that I wouldn't have done to my people during COVID, type of thing. And so that was, I think his downfall was, and I tend to give people a pass on COVID, regardless of whether Democrat or Republican, or whether they were, whether they were for more freedom or less, because, we really need to remember that we were in a situation, especially at the tip of the spear of COVID, where, and especially the data we had from Italy, specifically Italy, that we had, the doubling of the death rate was about every 3 days. And I wrote a daily column on Facebook, and graphed all of this information for Florida daily for over a year. And, it's kind of like your dad saying, hey, I'll give you $100 for your birthday, or I'll give you a penny and I'll double it for the entire month. Right. And how many of us would take the $100? But no, you get a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million or whatever it is. Right. If you take the penny and double it. Well, the same thing's true of the death rate. Right. And so that's what everybody was really afraid of at especially that March through mid-April, that first 6 weeks of COVID. And I don't recall exactly when this church service happened with the sheriff where he arrested the minister. But my guess is it was at the beginning. And everybody was just trying to say, hey, listen, let's try to slow this doubling of the death rate. And if you go back through the graphs, we in Florida even had a doubling of the death rate that started every 3 days. And after about 10 days, it stretched out to 4 or 5 days. And then it just kept stretching. And, so once it stretched to a certain period, I think that's when the governor felt more comfortable, opening up the state, and so I think he got caught up with some of that, but that's the reason why whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if you were a public servant and you were thinking about public health, you probably made some decisions that in hindsight you wish you had made differently.
Sure. And I think Greg Abbott from Texas had the same kind of situation. I think he ended up arresting a pastor out there too, the same way. But and you're right, we didn't know what we were dealing with. We had stuff that and you can question the numbers of the death rate all you want. I mean, I think that should be looked into, and how all that was counted, because if you compare us to other Western nations, we are off the charts compared to everybody else. So I think there was something hinky going on with that too. But so you're right. I mean, you can't really hold his feet to the fire because we didn't know what we were dealing with.
Well, and in those first 6 weeks, we didn't really realize, people like you and I didn't realize that, they were counting a motorcycle accident with someone who was inflicted with COVID as a COVID death. Right. Yeah. And so, but still, I think most deaths that occurred with people who had COVID were, probably caused by COVID, or let's at least say the vast majority. I mean, I think we can parse those figures over time, but at this point, I don't know that it's valuable to the conversation that much.
Well, I guess we just don't want to go down that same road, because I'm sure we'll deal with something. Yeah. Because I read something, it wasn't long, it might have been at the beginning of 2021, that somebody, I think it was in Satellite Beach, that was on his roof doing something and got struck by lightning, and they counted it as a COVID death. And I thought right there, it's like, yeah, this is, something's not right here. So,
Or there was a lot of people that had already ill health, and they may have died from whatever their ill health was. But if they tested them and they had COVID, the hospitals actually were making money off of saying, we had this many deaths from COVID. They got paid for it. And anytime you do that, you're incentivizing the wrong thing. So, we had a gentleman that died in a car wreck out on the freeway, and he died of COVID. What?
Yeah. But yeah, and that's all I want to do is just learn from our mistakes and go, you know what, next time something comes up and they want to, they would turn on the propaganda machine and try to make everybody scared to death to leave their house.
Already happening, by the way, in case you're wondering. I saw that today, and I wish I would have wrote down the gentleman's name. It irked me, and I just moved on. On MSNBC, a doctor, there's going to be a new pandemic on the 21st of January. Why would they pick that date? Yeah, he's already saying, it's going to be there. It's just going to be, you're going to have cholera and you're going to have, what are you talking about? Dengue fever he was mentioning. I'm going, what?
Well, there's a lot to choose from.
He had all kinds of stuff that you go, it was just fear mongering and it was not necessary. And
we kind of went through this. I had a Facebook post show up, and it was during the Obama administration, and it was, I forget if it was bird flu or SARS or one of those. And it was like, oh, here comes the next pandemic. And it was so obscure that I can't even recall it exactly,
Yeah.
Oh, he was talking about different ones that would jump from animals to humans, and he was trying to cover the entire gamut of everything he could think of. I'm going, the odds of everything you're talking about are, let's say, between slim and none, unless you're pushing it out there. So anyhow, that was like 10 minutes before I came in and started chatting with Mike a little bit before you came on. We like to be semi-prepared so that we don't know what we're talking about at all.
I want to sound like I have more brain cells than toes, but sometimes it doesn't work out so well. What kind of time we got, Richard? Because I'll be honest with you, Adobe Audition failed me just now. I happen to look down, and it's like, but that's okay. We'll take the audio from your end.
Do it from here. Just so you know, we've got 2 minutes.
Okay.
We can go to the next segment. It's up to you.
And it's all right. We'll continue, but I'll tell you what it is during the break. But what do you think about this DOGE? What the Department of Government Efficiency? How do you think that's going to shake out? I think they're already doing some investigations with all that too.
Yeah, I think, the funny thing is we don't have, there's not a Department of Government Efficiency, right? So there's not a funding mechanism for that department. There's not and so there's right this second, it's, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy who are the leaders of that and have a very big microphone. Yeah. And so, of course, they need members of Congress to implement. The interesting part of this is if they're actually going to become a department that is funded, they're going to need Congress to create it and fund it so that they can then
be investigated.
Yeah. So, funding to cut departments that are.
So we'll see how. We'll see how interesting it is. But there's certainly a large microphone, and these two guys seem determined to use it.
Yeah. It's I think it's just going to be interesting, but you're right. I mean, it's almost like the term limits thing. It's like, well, they're not going to vote themselves out of office or implement this to vote themselves out of office. And it may be exactly the same. I didn't even think about it from that angle. That's exactly, oh my God, this is not like Homeland Security that was made a department years ago out of the blue. And so this is very strange. So,
that almost sounds like it's from the redundant Department of Redundancy. We need money to fund to get rid of the departments that we're going to stop funding.
Yeah. Haven't we talked to you before? It's redundant. Oh my gosh. We're up against a break. Why don't we take that? And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Florida politics and the stuff that goes on down there and how it kind of affects the rest of the country down the road. And so hang in there. We'll be right back.
The Stay Off My Lawn podcast is recorded before a live studio audience.
With more ways than ever to connect to news and entertainment, 90% of new car buyers want that tried and true AM/FM radio option. That's because your local radio stations are reliable, trustworthy, and bring you a local connection that can't be replicated. Not to mention, it's free. No subscription or cellular data required. More than 80 million Americans each month depend on AM for their news, weather, local sports, and entertainment, plus talk radio. Help keep AM radio an option in new cars. Text AM to 52886. You'll get an auto-filled email letter to send to Congress urging them to keep AM radio in cars. Again, text AM to 52886. Brought to you by your friends at the Stay Off My Lawn podcast. I think, yeah, we'll see. Welcome back to Stay Off My Lawn, segment 3. And we continue to have our friend here, Jamie Miller, Florida politics expert and expert in a lot of different areas. I really feel kind of dumb being around you, but it's fun. I like to be around smart people. So
I was going to say, I feel dumb being around me too.
Well, I feel comforted by that somehow. It's great.
I'll need our own best friend, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
You know, as conservatives, we try to keep an eye on Florida politics, because in the last decade or so, the political climate shifted very sharply to the right. Probably 15 years now that I think about it. But part of it is the successes of Ron DeSantis, and he's kind of led the way in a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of states do kind of follow what Florida does. So this past election, I listened to a lot of Florida radio. I live north of Atlanta. So we have our conservative radio that was conservative for a long, long time decided to take a shift to the left. So they kind of once Rush Limbaugh died, they did all kinds of weird stuff and moved things around. So I was like, I don't have anything to listen to. So I listened to WFLA out of Tampa. And so I heard a lot about the amendments that were on your ballot this last time around. And it's just kind of like, or at least 2 of them. John Morgan was advertising for Amendment 3. I heard that. It's like, I suppose if you go to his law office, you have blunts in the ashtray that you can just kind of sit there and spark one up before you go to talk to him. But anyway, the Amendment 3.
I'll read that for what Amendment 3 is for our wonderful listeners, so you don't go, Amendment 3? No, it has to do with the Constitution.
I want to keep them in the dark, though, Richard. Let me keep them in the dark. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Confuse them even more than we usually. This is just for the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Amendment 3 would have allowed for adults 21 years or older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana products recreationally. The amendment would have allowed recreational possession of up to 3 ounces. In order to gain ballot access, the amendment was approved by the Florida Supreme Court on April 1st and acquired over 1 million voter signatures. Under current Florida law, marijuana is legal only for medical use.
Yeah, so they needed 60% of the vote to have that pass. I think they got 55.7, which...
Yeah. So just a little bit of in Florida, we have constitutional amendments, not ballot initiatives. So we're like, unlike places like California where you
have the props.
You can change statute. Sometimes you can change statute versus the constitutional amendment, which is a lower bar. And in Florida, we don't have that opportunity as citizens. We have just the constitutional amendment. And in Florida, to change the Constitution, you need to reach, you already said, the 60% threshold, which isn't unusual. There's several states that have that. Nevada, for instance, has a 2-step process. You have to win with more than 50% in 2 consecutive elections. And so it's not unusual to have some level of a higher bar to reach for a constitutional amendment. And of course, this one was a well-funded amendment, but I don't know that Floridians are necessarily, obviously a majority of voters, supported recreational use, but didn't reach the 60%. And so we have this situation where, if they try another bite at the apple, what do they have to do? And there were two major issues that came that people really didn't feel comfortable about, whether it was true or not. It was part of the election. One was that you were not going to be able to grow your own. Like you would still face a felony conviction if you grew your own plants. And so I was opposed to that because I'm like, well, our grocery store doesn't, try to indict me for growing my own tomatoes. Like if it's a legal product, it should be a legal product.
That's true.
And now if you're growing, and you're filling up your entire backyard and it's smelling in the neighborhood, and you're, then selling bales of it, that there may need to be some whatever the legislature decides on growing and distributing more than that. Then, but if you're growing for your personal use, I think that was probably one of the Achilles heels for the thing. And the other is we do not have counties have a ban on things like outdoor smoking in parks, but we don't have a statewide. And so there was a lot of question about, and in state law where it addresses that particular issue, it talks about cigarette smoking and vaping, not necessarily specifically marijuana smoke. And so I think there was a number of the electorate who voted no just because they didn't want to smell it in their parks and on their beaches. And so because like in Sarasota County, for instance, Sarasota County has passed a no smoking ban on beaches, but it's specific to nicotine. And because that's what state law allows a county to do, to ban, is the specific to nicotine. And so you have kind of these little things that popped up during the election. And I also suggest to people, when you have a well-coordinated no effort, these things tend to fail. And we had 6 ballot initiatives. There was only one that failed that didn't have, quote, a coordinated effort, and that was going to partisan school board races. In 1998, voters voted to go to nonpartisan school board races, and I don't even think it reached in the low to mid 40s. I haven't really paid attention to the final result, but it was never in doubt that it was going to fail.
Yeah. Interesting. I know as far as the marijuana thing goes, we went to Vegas a couple of years ago, and we actually went, now it's been 18 years ago. And, we're not gamblers, but we just kind of like to go see the shows and see the sights and everything. And, but this last time we went, it's like everywhere you went outside, it just stunk it was like you were walking behind a skunk the whole time. And I'm like, what is it? This whole north end of a southbound skunk thing, I don't think that would be a good thing in Florida because, you got so many kids and so many tourists and everything. It seems like that would hurt tourism. I mean, in my opinion, but.
Well, there's the argument was made that, a place like Disney World could ban outdoor smoking because they do. Yeah. They do that now because it's private property.
That's true.
And so, you wouldn't necessarily have this issue, let's say at Walt Disney World.
Right.
But you still could potentially have this issue, on your beach. Your kids would have to deal with it running past other people's towels and things like that as they're potentially smoking pot. So I think, my understanding is that they may take another bite at the apple of getting something on the ballot for 2026, but they'll address a couple of these issues in it and see if that's enough to get it over the top.
They'll take another swipe at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, when they're that close, it's like, we're not going to quit now.
Yeah.
And, you were mentioning smoking on the beach. For whatever reason, I remembered that the reason they were outlawing it was because of filtered cigarettes and the little filter on the end, people throwing those, animals getting them, and then they puff up, when they eating them and causing problems that way. They are kind of nasty in that regard.
So you're advocating for the Lucky Strikes, the ones that don't have any filters on them. Yeah, those are much better.
Great.
One of the number one polluters of all of our oceans are filtered cigarettes.
Isn't that something? Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, those little filters float everywhere, and they look like something to eat. And
that's the issue exactly. If you're in a community that allows smoking on the street, for instance, and somebody puts their butt out, a lot of that drainage in Florida, if you're in a coastal community, we don't treat the water if it rains on the street, and then we treat our wastewater. But if it just rains on the street, it pretty much drains down into the Gulf of Mexico or Atlantic Ocean. So any debris, including filtered cigarettes or the remnants thereof, end up in our bays and waterways.
Sure.
So roll your own, and it won't be a problem.
You know, when you were talking about growing your own pot, I remember when I was, when I first started high school in 1978, I think it was, Bob Graham, I think, was our governor back then. And and he had this thing where I guess there were people in the middle of the state that instead of orange groves, they had pot fields. And so he actually used to, I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if you lived there back then or I don't know how old you are, but he sprayed this paraquat stuff. And I remember him being on TV, and he was a Democrat and everything. But I mean, that was back when Democrats actually had a little bit of common sense in them. But I remember him being on TV. He says, "I have not yet begun to paraquat." And I just remember that is stuck in my head all these years. But that was one of those things that just they killed all the plants. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's funny.
So his other great quote. I like Bob Graham, and his two great quotes were one when he was first inaugurated, and then when under the inauguration of Jeb Bush. Of course, Bob Graham is a former governor. Says a few words, and Bob Graham and Jeb Bush were both from Miami. And they both happened to get inaugurated in January in Tallahassee on days that were about 28 degrees. And Bob Graham tells a story about an old pork chopper from North Florida. And he said, "It'll be a cold day in hell before we elect anybody from Miami governor of this state." And two of the coldest days on record are the 2 days that two guys from Miami got inaugurated.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Wow, a prophet didn't even know it, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
But he had a good sense of humor. That was pretty good. And we, my wife and I were actually talking about this. We were at Outback a couple of weeks ago, and it's like we remembered. It wasn't even that long ago here in Georgia anyway. It went by county. I think you mentioned that as far as like the smoking restrictions and everything. And they had restrictions in restaurants. The first county in my area to restrict smoking in restaurants was Cherokee County, which is just east of us. And we used to go out there just to go to restaurants when we went out. We didn't go out a lot at that point, but it was only because the people behind you, if you're still in the middle of eating, it's one of the worst things you can have is this whiff of
it's kind of amazing. You see these old movies like the Cary Grants and the, Gary Coopers, and everybody's just smoking all the time. And you just think like, how did they live like that? They must have smelled like it seems like now you walk by a bar where they allow smoking. You're like, I smell like smoke for 3 days, But they were smoking on planes. They were smoking in restaurants. They were smoking everywhere.
The last 4 rows of an airplane were smoking section. Oh my gosh!
That really helped.
Yeah, that really helped. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're right though. That was I was thinking about that the other day. I got out of my truck to go in the grocery store, and there's this person just puffing away on their vape and everything. I said, I can't believe these young people are doing. But then I remembered, 30, 40 years ago, everybody had a cigarette instead. I don't know what's worse, so it didn't really seem to matter. But everybody's got every generation has their vice, and that's this vice, I guess, or that's this generation's vice. Amendment 4, though. Amendment 4 had a lot of kickback to it. There was a lot of people advertising against Amendment 4. Richard, do you want to tell them what Amendment 4 was?
Amendment 4 said that no law could restrict abortion before viability, which most healthcare professionals say is around 24 weeks. The amendment was expected to reinstate the protections that existed before the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022.
And that lost by a much slimmer margin. It only they got 57% of the vote to pass.
That was, the issue here, and there's a little bit of history behind this here in Florida, where, we had, I think, 20 or 22 weeks for a long time, and then the legislature just a few years ago, I want to say, under Ron DeSantis, 2019, changed it to 14 weeks. And so there was a lawsuit going through whether 14 weeks was viable or whatever the terminology was. And in a subsequent session, while it's still going through the legal process, the legislature decided to push for 6 weeks and passed it. And so before whether 14 weeks was even established, whether that was legal, they passed 6 weeks. And so now 14 weeks is legal. And now the 6 weeks is going through the legislative session and going through the judicial process. And then you have, a citizens group got together and said, let's push for this much, much more liberal version of abortion that I think is way too liberal for our state. But it was in reaction to the legislature going to 6 weeks.
I gotcha. Well, that makes sense now. Now, I heard, I told you I listened to WFLA quite a bit. I'd heard that there's a line in that Amendment 4 that high school-aged girls could get an abortion under this proposal.
So, yeah, there's some legal question of whether or not it nullifies. We have a parental notification.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Constitutional amendment, and this amendment likely nullified the parental notification clause. So there were some real reasons to consider voting no on this amendment. Yeah. There doesn't seem to be yet a try to take another bite at the apple to try to get something. But I would expect that if they did, they would try to not go as far as they did.
At least take that part
word
out.
Viability is a stretch. There were a lot of vague. In Florida, you're not supposed to have, two things on one amendment, and you're not supposed to more than one thing on an amendment, and you're not supposed to have any vagueness. And this amendment squeaked by, and I think most of us felt like there was a lot of things that were vague in the amendment.
Yeah, and then one of the advertising, as advertising goes, it did say that parental consent, you had to have parental consent to give them a Tylenol, but not an abortion under this new amendment. So I thought, if that's true, that I really expected that to come.
Florida would have had the most liberal abortion laws in the country under this amendment.
Incredible. Well, hey, can you hang on for a little bit longer through a little bit of our next segment? So I got
sure.
a couple things I want to ask you. So hang in there. We will be right back.
Guests on the Stay Off My Lawn podcast stay at the luxurious Motel 6, right now 575 on Highway 20.
When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And no one does tough like Ford. Take the new F-250 XL with best-in-class horsepower, best-in-class towing capacity, a rugged design frame, and an impressive V8 diesel engine. If you're going somewhere tough, count on Ford to get you there.
Annoyed. That's the way it goes. Hey, welcome back to Stay Off My Lawn. It is segment 4. We are continuing with our guest. We normally never do more than 2 segments. We're going to have to get approval through the upper office or Steve, I guess is what he would do, the upper office.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Yeah, he's allowed to stay over.
We'll send Kendra an email and see if she's okay with it. We'll sit back and wait. Anyway, let me see here. Ron DeSantis. There's rumors of him being the next person in line if Pete Hegseth doesn't make it through or withdraws his name or whatever. Do you think he'll take it? Do you think? Because I don't think that he was wanting anything to do with the Trump administration at all at one point.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because so many people from Florida. We mentioned Pam Bondi in an earlier segment. But also, U.S. Senator Rubio has been selected or is going to be nominated to be Secretary of State, and expects to get. That's a pretty easy confirmation for him to get that position. So currently, and because of the Matt Gaetz resignation, and the current CFO. Also is running in Congressional District 1 in Florida, and a state senator is running in Congressional District 6. Florida has a weird rule that if less than half of your term is left, the governor appoints the remainder of the term.
Okay.
So in 2 of those 3, everything except for Randy Fine over in Congressional District 6, the CFO position is open and would be appointed by the Governor DeSantis, and so is U.S. Senate. So there's a lot of rumors and musical chairs running around. My wife and I actually taped a podcast at Reasonable Arguments just the other day on this whole thing. So if you want to hear a longer version of it, we have a longer discussion. But it goes something like, if Governor DeSantis leaves, does he make these appointments before he leaves, or does the the lieutenant governor, Jeanette Nunez, would fill his vacancy by state constitution. So, and then she would appoint also the new lieutenant governor. So there's a lot of pieces on the chessboard moving around just when you bring up the rumor of Governor DeSantis. Now, I believe Governor DeSantis, if that job is offered, will take it and would receive a pretty easy confirmation and would do a great job. He has been an excellent governor. He's an excellent administrator. A lot of people saw him on the campaign trail and kind of thought, and there are two reasons for that. One is that he's not historically known as a good retail politician. It sometimes comes across as a little tone deaf. And, the second thing is he basically is in the shadow of Donald Trump, and he didn't try to get out of the shadow. So prior to J.D. Vance becoming the vice presidential nominee, even up until the week before, if you conducted a poll, Ron DeSantis was still the second choice of something like 70% of Donald Trump voters. Yeah. And so when you said, it looked like Ron DeSantis would be heir apparent, that's one of the indicators was that he ran a campaign basically in case Trump faltered, not for him to try to take Trump out. And so that's why I think you see the hatchet getting buried a little bit here, because he didn't go negative against Trump. I mean, they had a campaign, right? So they talked bad about each other, but they didn't really stand toe to toe in the middle of the arena and have a slugfest.
Trump much more so than DeSantis did. I mean, it seems like.
Yeah. Trump. So I think so we'll see. I do think if Hegseth is able to maintain, I think they made a little bit of mistake. I think they should have. I advocated after Hegseth was nominated that they should offer the department, the Secretary of the Navy, to Ron DeSantis, him being a former Navy JAG officer, and they probably missed that up. Ron DeSantis should have come out of the gate as Defense Secretary and Hegseth as Secretary of the Army. And so but they made the decision they made, and. That's why I'm here on this podcast and not in a little room in Mar-a-Lago looking at all these things. So I can speculate all I want, but they're not necessarily listening to me.
Yeah. It's just so funny. I mean, Hegseth came out and addressed. Was it the Senate the other day? Or I forgot where he was, but he just kind of came out and said, I'm not the same person I was, 7-8 years ago. And supposedly some of the pundits I heard said that he did himself a lot of favors by doing that, but is it enough? Who knows? I personally
none of us want to be judged by our worst day.
Oh my gosh, no.
So,
I've had a lot of years where I've made a lot of bad decisions that I certainly wouldn't want it to be broadcast to the world either. So I think all of us are in that condition. So with J.D. Vance, do you see him as kind of, and this is more speculation down the road, do you see him as kind of the 8 more years of conservative politics once Trump leaves office? Do you think that's going to happen?
I certainly think he's going to have the chance to carry the torch, right, and have the torch passed to him. Part of it depends on, internal political things. How well does J.D. Vance's get along with the West Wing staff? How well does his staff get along with the West Wing staff? What kind of responsibilities do they give? What do they put him out front about? And how well does he do? So there's a lot of things that, we'll see kind of like, what they asked him to do and how he does. But a lot of that will be determined on, I don't want to say at the staff level, but some of this stuff does become, how well can he guide his staff to getting along with the West Wing staff so that that he remains the heir apparent? Yeah. Because while Harris was able to grab the mantle when it was offered, and it wasn't offered, she took it.
It was funneled to her. Yeah.
That's the one thing. That's the one thing I did respect. That's the one thing I did respect about her campaign was when she saw daylight, she took it.
Yeah.
She didn't wait to get corn. She made the calls, she did the things, and in 72 hours, she had the nomination. And I don't think that Obama and a lot of those folks expected that. They expected that decision to be made in the convention, in my humble opinion.
Well, constitutionally, it should have been.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just a piece of paper, apparently. So anyway, yeah, we've got it figured out for the next 12 years, I guess. But I really do believe that JD, it does seem like because of his humble beginnings, he should be able to get along with almost anybody. And all of a sudden he's a lawyer and he's an author and he made that documentary about his own life. He's got so many things going on that he kind of has been around people and there's never been any, not that I'm aware of, any scandals or anything where it was, he was a jerk to me or he threw me against the wall in his trailer or anything. I mean, everything seems to be good with him, but you're right. We'll have to wait and see how all that goes.
He seems to be a very genuine person who's able to connect with, like you said, a lot of walks of life.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think a lot of Trump's nominees are in that space. I think Tulsi Gabbard's another one that seems like she would be able to get along with, obviously making her way up to where she is in the Army too. She's seen and gotten around other people that I'm sure that she doesn't agree with, and she is thrived. So anyway.
For your listeners who aren't either fans of Trump or kind of buy into that, this is a horrible thing that he's won. I say one thing, and that hopefully they can take some comfort, is that Donald Trump, unlike 2016 or 2020, in 2024, Donald Trump is practicing the politics of addition. He's bringing more people to the table, more differing voices to the table. He's going to have the first female chief of staff, so he, and not because she's female, but because she's good.
Because she's qualified. Yeah.
And so but he's broadened his network with Robert F. Kennedy. In the past, Vivek Ramaswamy would not be included in a major position because he had the gall to run against him. Yeah. Ron DeSantis is the same thing. Tulsi Gabbard. You go down the list of all the people that he's practiced the politics of addition, and just 4 or 5 short years ago, that's not the politics he was practicing. Nope. So I think we're going to see a different Donald Trump. I think he's going to be a president for all Americans, and I think he's going to do a great job.
Yeah, he said he knows how it works now, so he's a little more prepared for how things were. One more thing that's not political. We're going to jump off all that. He goes, but I read that you joined the Hemingway Lookalike Society in 2021 and entered the inaugural contest in Key West. Now, do you have cats? Is that how this got started?
We do. Well, my wife had cats. I've never had cats, and then we are going to have our 4th anniversary this next week. So we now have 6, but we were up to 9 at one point,
oh, and so.
So I guess that's something, but none of them have 6 toes.
Okay,
that's a good group. It's it's a program where we go down there at Hemingway's, the anniversary of Hemingway's birthday, and raise money for local kids to go to college. And you can imagine Key West is like a lot of communities, believe it or not, where there's a big separation between the haves and have-nots.
Sure.
And a lot of the have-nots are, out there scrapping, trying to catch fish or take people on boats as tourists. And while that sounds like a glamorous job, it doesn't always pay the best. And, so we try to raise money, and we do it in a way that to honor Hemingway's legacy, which is kind of boating, writing, and nursing. If you follow his writing, his first love of his life was a nurse. And so we kind of try to honor his legacy in that way.
That's awesome. How'd you do in the contest though? As far as
I've not made the finals, but they, it's a tough,
I can see it.
It's a tough, well, when I grow it out, it looks even better, but it's a tough group. Most people don't win until they're in it 8 or 10 years because the only people who vote on the winners are past winners. So you have to make a long-term commitment of being down there every single year, so you have to kind of tell them that you're in for, and the other important thing is that if you win, you have to plan what we call the mid-year gathering, which is a party of just where the Hemingways get together and hang out and smoke cigars and drink small batch rum and do all the things that Hemingways do. Yeah. And we have a great time with that, but they want to make sure that you're capable of throwing a pretty decent party to make sure before they elect you the winner. So it's, you think getting elected president of the United States is tough. This is like getting elected Pope.
So you got to
kiss a lot more babies. Is that a lot more glad ending?
That's right.
A lot more gregarious than the normal everyday person. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you for public speaking or be on their podcast or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my emails or my socials are RepJam, REPJAM, except for my Substack and YouTube are both at Reasonable Arguments. So me and my wife are also on Rumble at Reasonable Arguments. But you can reach me at RepJam, REPJAM at gmail.com. So it's pretty easy.
Perfect. You've been
pretty easy to find.
You've been a great guest.
You type in Jamie Miller, Florida Republican. You'll see plenty of ways to get in touch with me.
It does pop up. We did that when we first got your email. It's like, who's this guy?
Now, if you just type in Jamie Miller, you might get the CFO of PayPal or some singer.
See that.
But you kind of have to say, Florida or Republican or politician or something to find me.
Well, we'll put in daggum right-wing Nazi and we'll see what we come up with.
Yeah,
that's probably.
Hopefully I don't show up for that one.
It might be Richard Nye first, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, right.
Not sure if he stands these days, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being on, man. We want to have you on again if something comes up. Maybe we'll
I'd love to.
keep in touch. You've got our email, and we'll continue on. We thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor. Thank you.
Jamie was a great guest, wasn't he? That turned out great.
Terrific. I haven't had too many he just could ask him a question and he'd just let him go because he knows what he's talking about. That's the kind of guest I love having on the show.
Again, I just like being around smart people. Yeah. Even though you and I like to be around each other. Well, anyway, we have a palate cleanser because we have gone through a lot of time on this today's show. So
we're going to be way over, but that's okay. This palate cleanser is something my wife found on Facebook about 4 or 5 years ago. She goes, "Here, you need to read this." She goes, "I started reading it, but," she goes, "it'll sound better if you do it." So there was no title to it. It was just a story. So It's like nobody's name was attached to it. We have no idea where it came from. So I titled it, How I Came to Believe in Santa for a Lifetime. And I added some music and some production. And it's very near and dear to my heart because my grandmother's cinnamon rolls were world-class famous because Grandpa and I said so. Not Grandma. Grandpa and I said so. We loved them. So it was just a lot of things that reminded me of her. So anyhow, here you go. If you got a young one that does it's that time around 9, 10, they're going, Santa, all my friends are just have them listen to this. We used to call it, now you have graduated to being a Santa's helper. And that's what our daughters were as they got older. It's like, you can't tell the other ones, this is the deal. Here you go.
My son's 34. I still signed Santa on his gifts. So
we loved it. It was always special in our house.
Yeah. So here's Richard Durrington doing what he does best, is reading a story. He's a great storyteller. And what was the name of it again? How I Came
to Believe in Santa for a Lifetime. How I Came to Believe in Santa for a Lifetime. Narrated by Richard Durrington. I remember tearing across town on my bike to visit Grandma on the day my brother dropped the bomb. "There's no Santa Claus," he jeered. "Even dummies know that." Well, my grandma was not the gushy kind, never had been. I fled to her that day because I knew she would be straight with me. I knew Grandma always told the truth, and I knew that the truth always went down a whole lot easier when swallowed with one of her world-famous cinnamon buns. I knew they were world-famous because Grandma said so. It had to be true. Grandma was home, and the buns were still warm. Between bites, I told her everything. She was ready for me. "No Santa Claus?" she snorted. "Ridiculous. Don't believe it. That rumor has been going around for years, and it makes me mad, plain mad. Now, put on your coat and let's go." "Go? Go where, Grandma? I asked. I hadn't even finished my second world-famous cinnamon bun. Where? Turned out to be Kirby's General Store, the one store in town that had a little bit of just about everything. As we walked through its door, Grandma handed me $10. That was a bundle in those days. Now take this money, she said, and buy something for someone who needs it. I'll wait for you in the car. Then she turned and walked out of Kirby's. I was only 8 years old. I'd often gone shopping with my mother, but never had I shopped for anything all by myself. The store seemed big and crowded, full of people scrambling to finish their Christmas shopping. For a few moments, I just stood there, confused, clutching that $10 bill, wondering what to buy and who on earth to buy it for. I thought of everybody I knew, my family, my friends, my neighbors, the kids at school, the people who went to my church. I was just about thought out when I suddenly thought of Bobby Decker. He was a kid with bad breath and messy hair, and he sat right behind me in Mrs. Pollock's second grade class. Bobby Decker didn't have a coat. I knew that because he never went outside to recess during the winter. His mother always wrote a note telling the teacher that he had a cough. But all we kids knew that Bobby Decker didn't have a cough. He didn't have a good coat. I fingered the $10 bill with growing excitement. I would buy Bobby Decker a coat. I settled on a red corduroy one that had a hood on it. It looked real warm, and he would like that. Is this a present for someone? The lady behind the counter asked kindly as I laid my $10 down. Yes, ma'am, I replied shyly. It's for Bobby. The nice lady smiled at me as I told her about how Bobby really needed a good winter coat. I didn't get any change, but she put the coat in a bag, smiled again, and wished me a Merry Christmas. That evening, Grandma helped me wrap the coat. A little tag fell out of the coat, and Grandma tucked it in her Bible. Then we used Christmas paper and ribbons and wrote, "To Bobby from Santa Claus" on it. Grandma said that Santa always insisted on secrecy. Then she drove me over to Bobby Decker's house, explaining as we went that I was now, and forever officially, one of Santa's helpers. Grandma parked down the street from Bobby's house, and she and I crept noiselessly and hid in the bushes by his front walk. Then Grandma gave me a nudge. "All right, Santa Claus," she whispered, "get going." I took a deep breath and dashed for his front door, threw the present down on his step, pounded on his door, and flew back to the safety of the bushes and Grandma. Together we waited breathlessly in the darkness for the front door to open. Finally, it did, and there stood Bobby. 50 years haven't dimmed the thrill of those moments spent shivering beside my grandma in Bobby Decker's bushes. That night, I realized that those awful rumors about Santa Claus were just what Grandma said they were. Ridiculous. Santa was alive and well, and we were on his team. I still have the Bible with the coat tag tucked inside. 1995. May you always have love to share, health to spare, and friends that care. And may you always believe in the magic of Santa Claus.
Well, that was a great story, man. I appreciate you sharing that with everybody. I think they're going to like it. I think they're this.
Well, thank you very much. I hope if you got comments on it or what you think of it, I'm happy to hear about that too.
Sure.
It was just something that was very near and dear to the heart to do. So hope you enjoyed it. SOML@duck.com. If you have any, you have a Buy Me a Coffee web account, maybe that would be great. If you could buy Richard a coffee. We need to set one of those up just so people can tip us, because I really think we're tip worthy sometimes. Tip us over, but monetary wise, we'll accept that.
It's like cow tipping, but for people, podcast people.
We're old and we tip real easy nowadays.
Well, we hope you were somewhat informed and had fun like we did, especially with our special guest, Jamie Miller. Don't forget you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Smart Speaker, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we have 2 new ones. We've got X and on Facebook now, correct?
That's true. It is x.com/stayoffmylawn10. So go follow us there. And we have a Facebook account. It's facebook.com/stayoffmylawnpodcast. So go give us a like, a follow, whatever it is, the middle finger, whatever it is you have to do to middle finger of fate, I think is what it's called. But anyway.
Finger of fate. The blind, fickle finger of fate.
That's it.
I think that was on Laughing.
Yes,
for those that are of a certain age. Yeah, guys, old guys. And also, you'll be able to find us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on the OracleTalkRadioNetwork.com. If you get the apps, they're for Apple and Android for Oracle Talk Radio Network. You won't have to go to .com, and you can just plug us in and listen to us on your way home every drive time on Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern.
That's right. So we will see you then, and see you next week, folks.
Thanks so much for listening, Doodles. Well, we had fun and hope you did too. The opinions heard here today are not those of anyone other than Mike and Richard. If it made you laugh or go, or even, then we've done our job. Sort of. Mostly anyway. And if we made you think about things in a common sense manner, we welcome you to the club. And if it didn't, then just stay off my lawn. See you next time.